It was awful. It was awful. Like literally, I would go into my car during lunch and just sit there and go, who does this? Who does this to themselves? On the 4th day of class, 9 hours. There's something good came out of it, which is that we went over as-is contracts. Now we're talking about 25 people that have been doing real estate for 2 years. Some have been doing for 6, some for 10, some are coming from different markets. Nobody except this guy knew anything about as-is contracts. Every single question that the woman would ask, they were like, and so I was sitting there just like looking back like, first of all, it's in the book in front of me. Second of all, you've been doing real estate for 2 years and you don't know the basics. So I got scared. I said, man, I wonder how many of our agents are just as bad. Hopefully not. But I called Bobby and I said, man, this is really bad. And he's like, yeah, it's important for us to do an as-is contract. Wendy from Title Now, I got her on the phone. She got Neil. Everybody knows Neil. I don't know if you guys came to the last training that Neil gave. He's excellent. And that's how it came about. Very last minute, basically in 5 days. We put it on the web, we put it on email, and we got everybody to participate. So it is our bad as agents if we don't know the as-is contract, and we can all have questions. It happens on WhatsApp all the time when people are asking a question or whatever. But the idea here is that we're going to learn a little bit about the contract and a little bit about how to prepare ourselves so that we don't make mistakes, and also 2 very important things that came up from that training of as-is contract, and I don't know how many of you know this, is that like in rentals, we have a terms of sale. We have a, what is it called, terms to lease? Contract to lease, which is the pre-lease. There is also a document, I don't know how many of you know this, show of hands. There's actually a document that is a pre-sale. So for the as-is contract, there is a document. And it's an awesome tool because A, it's a lot less overwhelming than a 12-page contract. When you sit down with a client who's never looked at a contract and you tell them, listen, in 1 page, I can show you everything that I'm gonna fill in to this 12-page document, it takes that fear away. So it's a great tool in that sense. Hi, come on in. It's a great tool in that sense. And also it clarifies in 1 page who's paying for what. So one of the biggest fears that we have in contracts, and he's going to go over this, is the fact that if I make a contract and the net counters on the same contract and I counter on that contract and she counters on that contract, all of a sudden there's 5 different transactions that have happened on 1 sheet of paper and it's messy. And usually what most of us do is that we start from scratch. You make an offer and then I rewrite it with my offer, and then you rewrite it with your offer, and all of a sudden we're working twice as much, right? So neither one is a good solution. Well, one of the great things that I learned in this class is that we actually have an addendum that's called a Counteroffer Addendum, so that we can keep the original offer clean, and on top of it add a cover sheet that says what a counteroffer is. So I'm going to show you guys really quick. Bear with me just 1 second, because what I want to do is I want to go to project. Here, cast, device. Fast. How do I type this?
What do you want
To project there?
Not there.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Let me know when you guys can see it up on the board.
Yes.
You can see it? Okay, great. So what I wanted you guys to do, and if I can ask all of you to do me this favor, is log into your londonfoster.net. It's not that I'm bored and asking you to do this, it's that the actual as-is contract that you're going to be following along is on there. So instead of doing a printout and wasting trees, we're all going to follow it on our phone. So go to your londonfoster.net on your phone, and we're going to log in. your phone. I need you to have a contract in front of you. So we're gonna go to londonfoster.net, and we're gonna go under Office Manager, Contracts and Forms. And Vasil was very kind to reorganize that for us. Okay, so it should look like this. Is everybody there?
No.
No? We're gonna go into londonfoster.net, and you're gonna go under Contracts and Forms. Hello. And we're gonna go into the as-is contract. Okay? So that way you guys will have the contract in front of you. Really quick, I wanted to review something with you guys, just so we're all on the same page. So while everybody's doing that, getting their as-is contract, londonfoster.net. Are you going into .net? You can't connect what, the internet? Or you can't connect to the website? Are you logged- It should be London Foster, and that's the password.
Go to londonfoster.net, Office Manager, as-is contracts and forms, and open as-is contract. No, you don't have a connection.
The internet's down right now, it's a little slow.
Do it on your phone.
It's working now.
It's not working.
It's not working? It's working here, so.
And I'm logged into the network.
Alright, you can see it.
Maybe this was uploaded before, and it crashed after. Refresh it to see if it uploads.
Yeah, okay, and then it will ask you again.
We just sign up with our own account, right?
Yeah.
The web is.
Guys, you know what
You
happened?
wanna save it or not?
It's down for you?
There you go. Now you can open. Your email address? And then it should be.
It's on? Mine's not on, but.
Go, it's in Google. No, go on the Gmail. Yeah. But you put an email address in the. Yeah, the Gmail one. I think they did it.
Okay, it's back on.
You didn't do it already?
Try again. Maybe too many people at the same time, and it crashes
We
the
can
server.
follow, we can follow in here. We're good.
Either way, just- Okay, so just give it a second. No, but I needed to get back on the phone.
You have to, no, the one you gave me.
Okay, it's back up. Okay, so I just wanted to go over this real quick. We have basically 5 minutes before everybody gets, I'll get here 3 minutes before everybody gets here. So I just wanted to show you guys something really quick. Obviously, this is a training. As you guys know, we were supposedly not doing any training in September. We did the commercial real estate. How many people went to that? 1. Okay. We had a huge turnout, so you guys missed a really, really cool event. We had that one, and I wanted to show you guys, under education, we have the calendar set up. Can you guys see that there? Is it green? No?
No, you're casting the contract. Look on the blue, you see?
Okay, is it there now?
So once we were in London Foster, where do we go?
You go under Office Manager, Forms, and then as-is contract. And in the meantime, I wanted to show you guys this. So basically, when you guys are asking what is our next training, when is our next training, Trainings are always on Wednesday. This is where you go under education, under calendar. This is the as-is contract that we're looking at today. Next month, we have 4 amazing trainings. So the very first one that we're gonna have is on the 10th of October. And for those of you that wanna learn about RPR, about doing CMAs, we're actually having Connie Nieto from the association. She's coming in, it's huge. The fact that they're even giving us somebody is a really big deal. And then on the 24th, she's coming back again. It's probably gonna be in this office because we have an issue with our AC in Kendall, and if we don't resolve it, we're gonna have to do it here. This one is going to be about IMAP. So the 4 most important trainings that you need to learn are Matrix, Form Simplicity, RPR, and IMAP. So that's really, really big. In fact, that we're gonna go over those 2, and that we're getting it done by somebody who's certified and from the association. We're gonna have basically every other week, we're gonna have what we're calling a marketing makeup. So for instance, how many of you do not have a headshot? You have a headshot. I've seen your headshot.
I know that's very old.
Okay, well, for instance, that would be what it's about. So on that day, Basil's gonna be doing headshots, he's gonna be training about business cards and the online agent profile. How many of you have not had your business cards made? Okay, so that's 2. So that's the idea. The idea is that we're all gonna start catching up. How many of you have not done your online agent profile? Okay, so 2. These will be the people that are gonna be coming to the training. So the idea is that we're gonna get harder and harder, and we're gonna go through all of these 15 points. Don't count them now, because I think they're more than 15. But we're gonna go through all of these, and we're gonna start with from headshots, business cards. There's gonna be an IDX website. There's gonna be one about the marketing pieces, and we're gonna get to that. Another thing that Vasil did was that he added under contracts and forms. So again, if you guys wanna look at the schedule and you wanna ask what it is, don't call me, don't call Vasil, go there. Go to LondonFoster.net. When you guys need contracts for whatever reason, you need to review them, you need to send them to a client or whatever, Form Simplicity is not working, they're all here. All the important ones are here. So you've got the as-is contracts, the exclusive right to sale, to lease. We added the non-lawyer disclosure, which we've already discussed how important, come on in, how important it is to have the non-lawyer disclosure and put that with every single contract, whether it's a rental or a lease, because it reiterates the fact that A, we're not an attorney, but B, that the person writes and reads in English. Remember, this is America and we do contracts in English. So if somebody's from Venezuela or from Colombia and they don't speak English, then they need to get an attorney. And that would reiterate that. The other thing that we added was the sales checklist. Can you guys see that yet or no? I have to cast it, right?
Yes.
You see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically I put this together. It has every single thing that you need to know. A little bigger, can you see it there?
Yeah.
Huge? Okay, has every single thing that you need to know for a deal. Nanette helped me with this, Christina helped me with this, a bunch of people put it together. So basically, this should be complete. If you find something that's not on there, let me know. But basically, the idea is that you have all the information about the property, the MLS, the folio, the listing price, the sales price, what your commission is, what the London Foster fee is. What is the most important part is right here is the important dates. And what was the date of the offer? What was the effective date? Which we know that the clock starts ticking after the effective date. Closing, appraisals, escrows. Did you get a seller ID? Did you get a buyer ID? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the documents you need. Who the listing broker is, who the buyer broker is. Basically, guys, this is a cheat sheet. This should be like your cover sheet outside of the little folder that you have with all your paperwork, and you go filling it out. Why? Because you're gonna refer to this 50 times in a transaction. And a lot of times we mess up because we haven't, put these important dates in. And then we go back here. The other thing that I wanted to show you guys, and again, I'm not saying that this is the all and be all. This is just something I did for you guys. If you guys like it, great. If not, let me know and maybe we can change it. But we put together an open house welcome sheet. A lot of people were doing their own and asking, oh, do we have one? So basically I put together a welcome sheet that has the basic information for an open house. Who's the person, their phone, their email, how did they find out about the open house, and have they been pre-approved for a loan. Why? Because that's the next step of recourse that you would wanna do. Okay, so that being said, does everybody know how to do things on Form Simplicity? I think we went a little bit over time, so get you started. You sure? Do you guys want me to show you guys how to do that in Form Simplicity? Because I think it's really important. What he's gonna go over is everything that we don't plug in. As you know, in Form Simplicity, we have a certain amount of fields that we automatically plug in. And we plug them in through two forms, through the MLS number and the folio number. Okay?
I want to say something because
Yes.
I don't want to say, because I know Bobby told me do not try to get clients. I'm not gonna
Okay.
get that, but I want to give you an advice.
Uh-huh.
Lately, most of the contracts from realtors are coming back to the mortgage broker because they are pulling the address from the MLS to the Form Simplicity.
Okay.
So most of them come with the incorrect address.
Okay.
Instead of going to the Miami-Dade property search and get the correct address, how it's spelled there,
Uh-huh.
they're pulling that, and it's something between the Form Simplicity and the MLS
Yeah.
that is not coming
That's
correct.
'cause they're
and
doing it
then-
wrong.
Okay, that is making the realtor to do an addendum correcting that, because if the address is not the same, it's gonna be a problem with the
No,
finance.
completely, but that's because they're doing it
So,
wrong. If you
okay.
first of all, I'll show you guys real quick.
Yeah.
Basically, what you
So
have to
that
do,
is-
no,
that
no,
is
it's
very
important,
important.
it's important, but I'll
Yeah.
tell you the reason why that's happening, if it ever happens, is because they're doing it wrong. Because in Form Simplicity, you're supposed to pull in the information from the MLS first, and then override it with the folio number. The folio number comes from the tax records. So that information is gonna be exact. And basically, it is your, I don't wanna say job, it's your obligation to follow whatever it says on the tax.
I know, it's so
Even-
verified that it's the same.
No, and even if the buyer tells you something different, then we need to double check it. But if the buyer says to you, no, and I bought this as a single woman, and here it's her married name, whatever it shows in the tax is what you have to do. And so basically, you have to, right, you have to do it off the folio.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why it's happening. And the reason why is because people are not doing that. And I don't want to talk bad about anybody, we're not gonna talk about the firm that we used to be at before, but at the firm we used to be at before, they used to make us write on the contract, one by one, copy and paste, that's why people made mistakes, because they're not pulling it correctly, they're pulling it from the MLS. And as you know, in the MLS, you can write whatever address you want, yeah. So let me go in this real quick, and I'll show you guys real quick what I'm talking about. Who here feels that they don't know how to use Form Simplicity well? Just one?
No one's ever gonna raise their hand, so every question you ask, just assume that I have my hand in the
No.
air.
Okay, who here feels that they know how to use Form Simplicity well? Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, 7 people that don't, okay?
This is what they don't,
Huh?
not what they don't, or they do.
No, I was asking who they do, because when I said that they don't, nobody raised their hand. Like every other system, guys, nobody ever learns how to use this 100%. We are giving a class, Bobby's really good at giving this class, and we're gonna give that class eventually on Form Simplicity. Let me cast this real quick. Okay. Is it on there?
Yeah.
Okay, so on Form Simplicity, the very first thing that you guys have to do, or that we have to do, is we have to go to the library. And depending on what we're doing, we're gonna look for a form. See right there where it says form? We're gonna look for a form. Okay, so we're gonna pretend that we're doing an as-is cash deal. Okay? So these are all the things that he grouped up for us on an as-is cash deal. Are we gonna use all of them? No, we're not. We're gonna pick now which ones we wanna use for our transaction. So for instance, we're gonna use the as-is contract, the rider. Is it a condo or a home? If it's a condo, you use a condo rider. If it's a home, you use the homeowner association. If it's older than 1979, you're gonna use the lead-based paint. If you wanna use the mortgage, the mold inspection, you do it there. He should have included a non-lawyer disclosure. He's going to. He's gonna add this to it, so we're gonna actually have it on there. But right now, it's not on there, so we're not gonna add it. So from that, we're gonna check these and we're gonna create a transaction, okay? So we're gonna create a brand new transaction, and I'm gonna put in my apartment. Please don't come to my house. Okay, so then we named this one exactly the same as the property. You saw how I clicked that? Oh, no, it's already up, okay. So then we'll try the new one. Okay, so now I have a transaction under that name that I created. Basically, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put everything into content. Again, unlike that other place where we used to work, those of us that used to work there, we're not gonna mention what it is, we don't put information into the contract. We put information into the content sheet. Why? Because if you do things right the first time and you put it into the content sheet, every other form you add afterwards will automatically update and populate. You won't have to, if you don't do it this way, then when you add a new contract, like an addendum, like an extension, like whatever, the counteroffer addendum that we're talking about, you're gonna have to sit there and write into it. So we're gonna go into content. And the very first thing that we're gonna do one second. I'm gonna look up my listing, because I will have a little bit more knowledge of which one it is that I'm doing. Okay, I'm gonna copy and paste my MLS number. Can you guys see that there? Yes? Anybody awake? Okay, so I'm gonna copy that MLS number. You guys see that? Okay, so what I'm gonna say is, I'm gonna say, please import from the MLS that MLS number. You see it? You see where it says select? I select that, and then automatically, what it does is it goes into my content page, and it's putting in all the information that I had put into the MLS. Now, if she's absolutely right, if I wrote the address incorrectly, guess what? It just pulled it up there. So now what I have to do is I have to go back here and go all the way to the bottom. You guys see that? Save information to transaction. Okay? I go all the way back up, and now I have to copy my parcel ID, which is my folio number.
When you are in the matrix and in a property, you can go to the for simplicity and immediately pull.
Right, I'm doing it the wrong way. No, since I'm doing it this way, because I'm trying to show them how to do it. Okay, so you go in here and you're gonna paste in the folio number. Okay, and you're gonna write in the county in which you're in. You guys see this? Is it being cast? So you see how I wrote in Dade, and then you find tax ID, and it did not find the tax ID. So what that means is that I copied it probably with the hyphens, and it's not recognizing the hyphens.
Broward County is your listing.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, thank you.
But that's a really good point, real quick, and I know that there are easier ways to do it where you just click on the MLS, right? So you click on the folio in the MLS. However, I don't know if you guys deal with new construction, if any of you deal with new construction, and you'll see where, or agents are duplicating listings. They're duplicating listings in the MLS where it might be with an old brokerage and they don't want to go through and cancel. So instead of the full folio, they might transpose the numbers instead of 0,
I'm showing you the
4, 1,
longhand.
0.
I'm showing you the
But
longhand.
this is the right way.
Yeah.
So if we do more work up front, like for instance, he put Miami-Dade, and we're like, oh my gosh, Memo doesn't know where his listing is, or the listing is wrong. If you're doing this on the buyer side of the transaction, if you do that wrong, immediately you'll catch errors up front, okay? And that's always more advantageous than to do what I did and sell the wrong property, okay? And I've done that twice.
So let me just show you this. So basically you select that one, and then that will upload all the information on there. Again, you have to save it. So now, you go back into content. So every time, you notice that every time I have to save it, you seeing that? That once I upload one thing, I save it, I upload the other, I have to save it. I go back into content, and now I can write in the stuff that I do know. For instance, my broker's email, you know, my work number, the buyer's party, my broker's ID, again, my broker's email. Okay, and I save that. This is done. Is it stuck on yours? Yeah. Okay, so now since I did that, look at what happens in the as-is contract. Did everybody get that? Okay. You see what happened? You don't see it?
You lost connection.
Cast it again. Sorry. You see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So basically what happens is if you look here, all of the seller's information that came from the tax records, the address, the legal description, the ID, the county, all of that was filled in. The buyer's information, you see how Heda Gonzalez is here? That's because I wrote that in. And she'll be so loved that I'm using her as an example. So anyway, but basically that's the idea. The idea is, and now I'm gonna hand it off to him, but I just wanted you guys to understand that this is the way you would do it if you needed to input stuff. So you always wanna add it into the content, make sure that the content is correct, because when you write in those addendums and you add that non-disclosure and you add in any other forms into that little folder, if you did not do it in the content page, then you have to sit there and do it all over again by hand. So obviously it's twice the work. Okay, you're on.
Thank you, sir. So my name is Neil. The reason I'm here is because I have been held hostage. No, but seriously, a couple of things. I travel all across the country training agents, and I'm telling you guys what your brokerage offers you guys as far as the trainings that they have are second to none. Jenny and Title Now, what they do, what they offer for you guys is second to none. If you're not taking advantage of it, you guys are severely lacking. I'll be upfront. So it's their job to be the good guys, my job to be the bad guy and tell you guys how much you suck. Is that fair? Is that okay? All right. If it's not, then tough. All right. Life is not fair. Life is life. You guys understand that? Agree with that? All right. So what I'm going to do, we're going to talk about the as-is contract. The reason we're doing the as-is contract, because that's what I was told to do. How many of you use the as-is contract in your business? How many of you use the CRSP, the CRSP? Anyone? Okay. And just to be clear, it doesn't matter which contract you use. When you're good at it, you can make it say what you want it to say. All right. Fair enough. A couple of things that I just want to get out of the way initially. What qualifies me to talk to you guys about the as-is contract? I've looked at tens of thousands of contracts in my 13-year career. This is the only thing I've done for 13 years. No side hustle other than being a dad and a husband. Okay. If you guys are not great resources that you guys have, and I hope you're taking advantage of, take advantage of Title Now. When I say take advantage of them, take advantage of them. A lot of the things that I know Memo talked about, the checklist. If you're working with Title Now, they're going to make sure that you guys have that critical data information so that we don't lose a deal, so that we don't put our clients' jeopardy or property at risk. All right. How many of you have been in the industry for less than a year? Less than a year? All right. Our congratulations and condolences for you few people. See, the people who giggle, they've been in for more than, a couple of years. So they're like, more than a year, but less than 5. Okay? More than 5, less than 10? More than 10? More than 15? Okay, now, more than 20? Anyone? Okay, all right. I'm not going to make you guys show your age. That is good enough. Right? So you guys are like, oh my gosh. So I just want to say that to let you guys know how important it is, or why I ask that. 80% of realtors are out of the industry within 18 months. Right? So you guys think about that. 80% of realtors are out of the industry within the first 18 months, but we still have 1.6 million realtors, right? So it's just a revolving door. Now, how many of you signed a contract or executed a deal in the past 7 days? Anyone? Executed a contract? Okay, they're buying lunch for you guys after this, just so you guys know. Because we're going to go ahead and spend their money before the checks are cashed. All right? How many of you have executed a contract in the past 30 days? Okay, how many of you have looked at a contract in the past week? Looked at a contract in the past week. If you are not looking at contracts every week, you are doing yourself, the industry, but most importantly, your clients a disservice. Okay, can I tell you guys, can I be honest with you? All right, and the reason I say that, who knows what contracts are? Who can tell me what a contract is? See, you're smarter than me, because to me, that's too advanced. A contract is a tool. A contract is a tool to get what we want. And what do we want? What do we want? Nope. We want our clients to be happy. That's the right answer, right? We want our clients to be happy. Okay, now and the reason I ask that is because as a carpenter, how many do we have? Well, first, do we have any attorneys in the room? Any attorneys? Okay, I am not an attorney, so we're going to talk to them about them like dogs. Okay, fair enough. Right? Because I'm going to tell you guys the way to use contracts and things that you need to know about contracts as a realtor, as an agent, as someone who's out in the field, is going to be totally different than an attorney teaching an as-is contracts class. All right. So I'm going to give you guys some loopholes, some best tips, practices, or whatever you want to call it. But this is a tool, and the reason I say it's a tool is if you give a hammer to a layperson, to one of us, what can we do with it besides hit our thumb? Not much, right? But if you give a hammer to a skilled carpenter, what can they do? They create masterpieces, right? Now, if you do not know your tool, and if you don't bring it out until it's showtime, do you guys expect to be effective and efficient with it? Easy question. How many pages are in an as-is contract? 12. How many pages are on a CRSP contract?
18, maybe?
Anyone know?
Who knows? Who uses those? Nobody uses those.
I use it. You know why I use it? Because no one else uses it, and I can present a contract to people and I can get over on you guys because you don't know what you're looking at. Fair? Okay. So think about that. Just because we're saying, well, no one uses them, there are a lot of skilled agents who make their living using CRSP contracts. Okay, so just think about that. We're not doing the CRSP contract now, but it's your job. We are real estate what? What are we? Real estate what? Professionals. Is the CRSP contract a tool that can be used in our industry? By who? By everyone. Do I care if you're not skilled in using the tool that I use for my client? Do I care? Absolutely not. Is it fair to do it? Absolutely. The law says I can. So while we're going over the CRSP contract, if you don't know the CRSP, while we're going over the as-is, if you don't know the CRSP contract and the as-is contract, you are not doing your job as a professional. All right, and this is the tough medicine that I have to take, okay? Because what happens when you present, if I send you a CRSP contract and you look at it, are you just going to say, no, send it back on an as-is? Or can you do that?
Yes.
Can you do that?
Yes. Every day.
Legally, can you guys do that?
I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
No,
I can counter it.
You can counter, but you cannot reject it unless you have a clause in your listing agreement that you can.
Where it says as is only.
No, not in the remarks. Not in the remarks. If it has to be in your listing agreement. If it's in your listing agreement, yes. How many of you knew that? So, and the reason I'm bringing this up. So, for instance, if I'm a buyer's agent, and if I send a CRSP contract to you guys, okay, the first thing you're going to say, because in the MLS, we think that because we put as-is contracts only, we think that covers it if it's in the broker's remark. That is not correct. Unless you've been instructed by your seller to accept as-is contracts. The seller has to initiate that. I'm sorry?
To write that on the list.
If it's in the listing, so for instance, if it's in the listing agreement, if I see on a MLS that it says as is contract only, I ask the listing agent to provide the listing agreement to the association, not to me, to the association showing that it says as-is contracts only. Okay? So make sure that you're careful. And if you do that, if you put as-is only, that has to be at the request of the seller. We cannot do that because it's convenient for us. Okay? Very, very different. So if you don't take anything else away, what I'm saying is know your CRSP, know your as-is, know how to use either. Okay? Because you're going to run into agents who want to use one or the other, and we think that it's because it's easier. Because the as-is, the CRSP contract is shorter than the as-is. Okay? The as-is contract now is written advantageous to the buyers. How many buyer specialists do we have in the room? How many listing specialists do we have in the room? Who just works with anything that's breathing? Okay, so do you guys understand and agree that depending on who you work with, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, your contracts are going to be totally different in the way you prepare them? You guys understand that, right? One of the easiest things is inspection days, right? If you're working with a buyer, what do you want for the inspection days? As many as possible. If you're working with the seller, what do you want? You want 0. Waive that inspection contingency, right? Same thing for our loan approval deadline. You guys understand that? If you're working with the buyer, we want to give that 45 days. Even, oh, well, no, we know we can get it done. Nah. Because we want to protect their escrow, do what's in their best interest. Make sure that when you use this tool, you're using it for the best interest of whoever you represent. If that's the transaction, if you're a transaction manager, a transaction broker, that's there. If you're a single agent, that's a whole different agency conversation. But make sure you're doing it for whoever's in the best interest. You guys okay with that? All right. First thing, a quick way to tell. What's the first thing we look at? Two questions. What's the first thing we look at on a contract? And contract. What's the first thing we look at on a contract? The price. We look at the price first. Okay. What's the first thing we should be looking at in a contract? Anyone? Oh, this is interactive.
Closing date.
Closing date. What is the first thing we're looking at in a contract? We should be looking at financing, cash, financing. I'm sorry? The name of buyer and seller. Okay, the last thing I want you guys looking at in contract are the terms. That's the last thing. The price, finance, that's the last thing we're going to look at. The first thing we're going to look at is make sure that we have a legit offer, right? We want to make sure we're looking at the signatures, right? We want to make sure that the details such as the name, the property address, because if all of that stuff is messed up and we're so excited because we got a full price offer and the names are wrong, the property address is wrong, guess what? You'll sell the wrong property like I did twice. Right? Folio was wrong, and I sold it, and it got here in the title company. Everyone's okay, and we're like, that's not what you bought. Like, what you mean? That's not what we bought. No, you bought the one instead of Lane on Court, right? Easy mistake, but it was still a problem. Okay, yeah, I did it twice. It wasn't the same property. It was twice. I mean, but now, fair enough. So the thing is, the reason I did it twice. And it's fair for me to say, is because, and this is a humble brag type deal, when you sell 1,000 properties a year, 2, we'll take that. Okay, fair enough. All right. So next to the making sure that everyone is correct, the terms, the names, and now we're looking at the cash or the amount. What's the next thing that we're looking at on the contract? What's the next thing that we should be looking at on the contract? Finance. Okay, finance. I'm sorry? Dates? Inspection period? Contingencies? Escrow? Additional terms. Guess what? All of you have the right answer because all of those are things that we can negotiate. Okay? Once we have this, once we make sure that it's a solid offer, everything else. Now, the first thing that we look at is we start calculating the commission, right? Reality. That's what we do. Now, be careful that we don't lead our client into making decisions based on what's best for us. Fair enough. All right, questions that you guys have. What are some questions that you have about the as-is before I go any further? What are some questions? Yes, ma'am.
You use the CRSP instead of the as-is?
I use the CRSP instead of the as-is when it comes to the inspection or the appraisal issue. The CRSP allows for, now if you look at this, the CRSP allows for negotiation if the appraisal does not come back, if you don't use the appraisal addendum in the as-is, okay? In the as-is, if it doesn't appraise, what it says is at the buyer's discretion, they can either walk away or keep the terms and go forward, removing the appraisal. It does not say in here, it does not say that there's a need for negotiation or that you can negotiate in here. So understand that. So that's the main reason. The other reason that I would use it would just be for the inspection and who pays what and what I can get, so that I don't have to add addenda. That's the main reason. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
The solution then would be to add an addendum to the.
Okay, and so this is why it's so important, because it does not matter which contract you use. You can make a as-is contract read like a CRSP, or you can make a CRSP read like an as-is if you know what you're doing, okay? If you know what you're doing. We're going right back here to the back first and then to you, sir.
Yes, back to what you were saying about the appraisal and having to put the appraisal addendum.
Yes, sir.
So on a contract that you haven't placed an appraisal addendum on, and you have that scenario that you were explaining where the appraisal came back lower than the purchase price, does the buyer have a time limit before the seller can say, hey, I'm tired of you waiting to decide if you're going to come out of pocket and buy my house, or say you want to negotiate with me, or whatever? Is there a time period?
Is there a time period? Is there a time period? So if an appraisal comes back low on an as-is contract, we do not have an addendum for the appraisal. Is there a time period? Is there a time period that the seller can enforce or that the buyer has to make a decision? Yes or no?
Yes, the 30 days.
It's the financing period.
It's the financing period.
Within the financing.
Within the financing period, okay? So and we will keep saying 30 days. So understand that's what's standard. So make sure that because if on, and your name? You're Nanette?
Memo. My name is Memo.
Okay, so so this is a great thing. I want to see who you guys have access to, okay? And I want you guys to use them, because they could be up here just as easily, but a prophet isn't heard in his own land. So that's why I'm here.
Just to clarify.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify. So let's say agent didn't put the addendum, but the contract gets executed, everything's going fine, the appraisal's done within 2 days. They didn't mark anything, it stays at 30 days, as the contract states, it didn't put 45, 30 days. The appraisal comes back the next day. Now we're 3 days into the executed contract, or the clock is ticking, and this scenario comes up. So the buyer has 27 days to say, hey, I'm confused.
So that's why I said, okay, so this contract, the as-is contract now was revised in April of 2017. And the main revision was, I say section 8, but it's paragraph 8. So don't confuse that with section 8, okay? So paragraph 8, and all of this is the financing part of it. Now, in loan approval time frame, the financing or loan approval time frame, that's when they have up until the end of the loan approval deadline to decide whether they want to walk out or not, okay? Make that crystal clear. So there used to be, how many of you have remembered the loan commitment, right? Because we've been in the industry a while, so we remember the term loan commitment. There is no loan commitment deadline anymore. Now it is a loan approval. So to answer that question about the appraisal, but also about anything else, if a buyer has a loan approval, okay, if they're approved now, but they don't communicate that approval to you, they could cancel on day 30 or whatever, 45 or 60, whatever the last day is. Now that's one of the things that and that's one of the terms you want to make sure that you look at when you're communicating that to your seller, if you're representing the seller, or if you're representing the buyer. I'm not telling you guys to get your buyer to cancel on the last day, but if it's kind of iffy, that is an out for you guys. Yes, ma'am.
In my experience, the sooner the better, though, so you can negotiate, if negotiation is possible. Depending on if you have a roof that needs repaired, etc., you can use that money and manipulate all that money and everything at the same time, So to me, I think the sooner the better.
Of course, it makes sense. But my thing is,
but you wouldn't have to.
Say you're the buyer's agent in this scenario, and immediately you disclose your buyer gives permission to share the appraisal with the seller, and you show it to the seller, and it's whatever, 10 grand number, it's a significant number. And now they're like, okay, so what are you gonna do? So basically, they have to the end of the time period to
Yes.
respond to that question.
Yes.
And the seller can't do a darn thing about it.
No.
Because they signed the contract. Okay.
And the
Correct.
reason also, I'm sorry.
No,
but
go ahead.
The reason also is because, let's say, for instance, I applied for a qualification, whatever, the appraisal didn't come in higher. I can bring money to the table.
Right.
I can get a secondary personal loan.
Right.
I can get a gift from my grandmother.
Right.
I can go out and try another bank and see if that bank's appraisal comes up higher. Basically, I have those 30 days to figure out my life and figure out how it is that I'm going to do it. And the seller can't tell me, no, you need to go with Bank of America.
Now I have it. Now I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going right here then to you, sir.
Let's say you make a mistake on the names. Can you create an addendum to change, to rectify the name?
Yes, yes. So that is as simple as just correcting the name on the addendum.
So does the seller have the same window of time to, let's say it's gonna take 30 or 45 days, and then they said, okay, you're taking your time, I'm gonna wait, and I'm going to call an inspection because something changed in the market. Something back at the right amount.
So any appraisal that the seller orders, it cannot be used by the lender, by the buyer's bank. So it doesn't matter if they have 50 appraisals done, if they pay for it, the buyer's bank chooses, or their lender, they're going to choose the appraisal, and that's the appraisal that's going to be used. Even if there's an appraisal from a previous contract, people think that because there was a previous appraisal done, they use the same appraisal. They do not use the same appraisal. They factor in the comps that were used, and if it's within a certain window, we're going to say, unless there were just some dramatic changes and like 10 or 15 new transactions that happen that would be comparable, then they wouldn't use it. But no, so it does not matter. The seller is in a holding pattern at the mercy of the buyer. So understand that when we are disclosing, when you're presenting these offers, the terms of the contract, everything other than price is more important than the price. I'm telling you, everything other than price is more important than the price. Yes, ma'am.
So if you're representing the seller and you want to kind of save them that headache in case the appraisal is lower than it's supposed to and they don't want to waste another 15, 20 days, whatever, can you put any clauses in the contract and on the addendums or anything that can help the seller as far as like,
Getting out of the
You can put
because I've seen that.
the addendum that if it doesn't appraise, you can use the appraisal addendum, right?
So you can put that in there. However, you can't do anything unilaterally. So it would still have to be agreed upon by the buyer. No, by the buyer. So that's why I'm saying, depending on who you use, right? So if we can't put...
The buyer to sign that and it has the addendum
But
saying-
no buyer would sign that.
Yeah, I do. It's
Not my
subject to
government.
appraisal.
It is-
I've done it before.
No,
It's
but I'm
subject
saying, like,
to
but you
appraisal.
should have
House is
30
not
days to get a
subject
loan.
appraisal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Some markets sure.
Hold on, wait.
Would the lender come back and try to bite you for making the buyer sign something like
No,
that?
so wait. So this is what I need you all to understand. This is what I need you to understand. That once something is signed, it is enforceable. If you're on the losing side, it's your fault for misrepresenting your client. If you're on the winning side, kudos to you. Now, I know that we are supposed to do what's in the best interest of the, bless you, if we're transaction brokers, best interest of the transaction. I'm telling you guys right now, if you've heard me talk about contracts before, do not have your client sign the first offer that I send to you, because you will lose every time. I put things into my contract just so I can see. I do it for two reasons: to know the experience and expertise of the other agent that I'm dealing with, because if I'm representing the buyer, I'll have your seller pay for a $1,000 home warranty from Home Warranty of America. I'll put it in there, make it the same size font as the contract right here. And if your client signs it, then I'm going to say, once it's executed, I'm going to go back and say, oh, great. I'm so excited. Here's what we're going to get from Home Warranty of America. Kick butt, awesome $1,000 home warranty plan. And they're going to say, wait, but we didn't know we signed it. I don't care. That's your job. Okay. Something I'm going to encourage you guys to do is, before you have your client sign a contract, how many of you have an attorney review the contracts before your client signs? Because we don't think that you guys get your offers over to Title Now. They have in-house attorney, correct?
Yeah, attorney owned and operated.
Attorney owned and operated.
Review every single contract we send you. even if there's no escrow yet or anything?
I will suggest, because so if you guys don't know the suite of services that they provide to you guys, from the contract to close and everything, you guys are missing out. They do it for you guys. They've worked out something great with London Faucet. You guys have to take advantage of it, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to get something signed, executed, and then say, oh no, oh my gosh, we're in trouble. Now, there is an addendum. There is, whether you're representing the buyer or seller. Well, if you're not using an attorney or not having your attorney review it, you probably are not using the addendum Y and Z. Addendum Y is seller's attorney approval. Addendum Z is buyer's attorney approval. So if you want to execute a contract, if you're not doing it where you're getting it out there to the attorney first, if time is of the essence, do the contract. Make sure, though, here's the key, make sure that you send this addendum with the executed contract, okay? And make sure you check it off in the additional clauses section, whether you're representing the buyer or seller. And then so for instance, for the seller's attorney approval. No, let's do the buyers, since we'll be working with buyers and we'll send it over. If we want to get it executed, this contract is contingent upon buyer's attorney approving this contract. If buyer's attorney disapproves this contract, then buyer may terminate this contract by delivering written notice to seller on or before blank, and buyer shall be refunded the deposit. Okay? This is a great way. We know that the United States is a very litigious country. Right? So we want to go after as many escrows as we can. This is something I'm putting on every one of my contracts. Every one, when I'm representing the buyer, or if I'm representing the seller. If I'm representing the seller, I am doing the seller addendum when I send it back. Okay? And why am I doing that? Because I know there are agents like me on the other side of the transaction. All right, someone who's going to slip in things, or if there are issues with title or names and property addresses and everything, I want to make sure that my attorney approves that. Any questions? Any other questions right now?
What is the name of the?
So there are going to be Y and Z. So one is going to be seller's attorney approval. That is if you're representing the seller, and then buyer's attorney approval. That's Z. Now, we do not utilize attorneys here like we should. However, if you're dealing with any buyer that is coming from New York, Pennsylvania, or New Jersey, they're going to have an attorney review everything. Many of you, if you're dealing with international clients, I know that it was mentioned if they come and English is not their first language, we're not attorneys, but we want to make sure that they're having it read and understand what it is in English, translated, or interpreted into their language. Make sure you do that, and that's a great way through that. All right, how many of you are dealing with clients whose first language is not English, right? So what you should be doing, you should, if you want to have them execute the contract, make sure that you have that buyer's attorney approval in there, get the contract over to their attorney, right? And maybe they can look through it, because we are not attorneys. These contracts and addenda are changing almost quarterly. Okay, almost quarterly. Any other questions, comments, or concerns so far? Buyer specialist. If you are working with buyers, a great way to take advantage of, or a way to protect your client's escrow, is if you look in paragraph 8, section 2C, if it's financing. We know that it's financing, so we're going to B. All right, but then down here on 2C, so let's say we choose conventional financing, loan within, they'll apply for a loan within X number of days. 2C says at an interest rate not to exceed blank. If left blank, then prevailing rate based upon buyer's credit worthiness for a term of boom. Now, who could tell me what the prevailing rate for mortgages are right now? Anyone? 4.2. So if I were to put in this section 2C at an initial interest rate not to exceed 4%, and we get approved, so right here, got it. Right there. So that is going to be line 8, line number 89. If you No, sir.
No?
If you are a listing agent and you get an as-is contract that you love and that you know so well, yes, sir, let's blow that up for me, please, sir. And that you know so well, but if you skip over line 89 and your offer is from Neil Oates, if I know that the rates are 4.2, if I put 3.9 in there and it's executed and I come back with the loan approval of 4.2, guess what? I can walk. Me and my buyer can walk. And guess who's the bad guy with their seller? You are. Because you did not know what you were signing. It is that serious, guys. It is that serious. Now, in the CRSP, it doesn't have that part in there about the 89 right here, where it says at an initial interest rate not to exceed blank %. If it's left blank, you're okay. If there's a number in there, depends on who you're dealing with.
You know what? I don't agree with that, and I'm going to tell you why not. And we were talking about this earlier. If you leave something blank, how do you know that when I counteroffered and wrote on top of that contract, I didn't write into it? You'd have to know what you left blank. So you know what? I leave nothing blank.
Okay, real quick on that note. So when we're doing counteroffers and now this is contracts are really a 3-day class that we're never taught and that we don't learn until you're burned. All right, that's fair, right? Because once you're on the fire, then you say, dang, I'll never do that again. All right, so on this, one thing about counteroffers, there is a counteroffer addendum. Has anyone ever used the counteroffer addendum? If you are not using the counteroffer addendum, because the counteroffer addendum protects you from agents like Neil Oates. The reason being, it is 1 page. All right. So what happens? I hope all of you do. So what will happen if you send me an offer? I'm going to send you one back with the counter offer, but instead, I'm going to go through, instead of having my client mark it up, I'm going to draft a new one, fill in the blanks that you left blank. That's advantageous to me. Okay. You guys understand that? Because if I do it that way, I don't have to have my client initial the changes. If I send you back a marked up contract, let's say if you left the right here. Okay, yes, so here it is right here. So if you don't use this, and if I send you back a marked up contract, meaning that instead of $250 for the sales price, if I put $300 for the sales price, that means I have to mark up the contract, mark out $250, have my seller, buyer, initial, it looks ugly. And so what I'm going to tell you, to make it look better and easier for everyone to read, I just took what you have your client sign and send it back to me. Does it matter what I tell you? Absolutely not. It matters what's in writing. So if me, now here's the question where we start saying, is it legal? Yes. Is it moral? Depends on what kind of agency agreement you have. Because if I do everything as a single agent, and if I do what's in the best interest of my client, and I have a fiduciary duty, as long as it's legal, you guys understand where I'm coming from. So if I send you a new contract and I tell you, Nanette, it's signed, I put everything that you put, I just recopied it, put it in here, sign it, send it back. If you trust me and take me at my word, because I am a respectable looking young man.
No way, Jose.
But how many of us do it because we want to execute a contract and put those dollars?
Listing agent told you, oh yeah, just send it back to me. Like that, just mark up the contract. They don't even want the even with that, I know from personal experience and all of the thousands of agents that I'm coaching and teaching, we are not doing our due diligence to make sure that our clients are protected, because we lead thinking commission first. Okay. Now, so what this addendum does, that's on the screen here, it's going to tell you counteroffer number. You can come in and then, if you're going to change the price or any other terms. For instance, the gentleman asked what line number it is. You guys need to get familiar with line numbers. Okay?
that is going to be one of the most important parts, because if there's any changes on that offer that I sent to you, instead of me drafting up a new offer and changing something in it, I'm sending them this here right here. Use the counteroffer addendum, and just make the changes right here. Because now, I do not like overwhelming I used to say I don't like overwhelming my client, whether it's the buyer or the seller. The truth is, I'm afraid of screwing up and it costing me money. Okay, so now if I can come here on one page and say, okay, line number, this we're changing, this we're changing, this we're changing, and then in bold it says this is intended to be a legally binding contract. All right, so understand that while it's a tool, it can also be a tool of mass destruction. Everyone familiar? Everyone okay with this? Yes? How many of you are going to be using this going forward? Hopefully everyone, unless you're not doing deals, then you might be out of the business in 18 months. And like I said, it's not my job to be the good guy. So, yeah.
I wanted to add something in there that happened to me.
If it's a story, it's either got to be explicit or, no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I got a counteroffer, and the realtor and I agree, actually with the attorneys, to lower the commission. So
now, careful on that, because you guys know that as realtors, as agents, you as an agent cannot reduce or have any conversation about commissions without your broker's okay. We see it all the time. You as agents who want to say, let's go 50-50, let's reduce this to make it work. If you do not have the okay from the brokers in writing, what can and what does happen is the broker can come to you as an agent and ask for their full share based on...
Sorry to interrupt you. We're at 100% commission.
No.
We work on contracts.
But I'm talking about what if they negotiate on the other side of the transaction, the other brokerage is not.
That's their problem.
So
that's what happened to me. I agree with the realtor, and then the guy went on vacation when we closed. When he came back, he says, the broker says, what is the rest of the commission?
yes.
And I said,
And-
disagree. What's in the contract? You wrote the contract.
No. So hold on, wait.
Brokers that reach out to us on closing day and they're like, we had no clue that this was going on.
Now,
We're trying to, like,
understand that any commission, because there is a commission adjustment form, right? So there's a form, and it has to be agreed upon by both brokers. So even if you guys are 100%, it has to be executed by both brokers. That is not a unilateral deal.
Buyer, seller, no.
No, not buyer and seller, but because commission.
Would you add that into?
Commissions can, wait. Commissions, no, we do not add it to contracts because commissions cannot, it is a violation of the standard, of the code of conduct. Commissions cannot be negotiated in the contract because who is the contract between? The buyer and the seller. Who are the commissions between? Broker and broker, not agent and agent. We can't stress that enough. It's not agent and agent, it's broker and broker.
So there must be a separate agreement between the broker.
Go all the way down, scroll down. No, it's a different one. Okay. So I don't even think it's in this. So hold on real quick. So on that note, everyone, on that note, even if you're 100% on commission, let's do this in order to make the transaction work. You need to ask them. First of all, the safest way is to have that go through the title so they can get in contact with both brokers to make sure that you're safe, especially with title now because they have the transaction management, transaction coordination. They'll take care of all that. Do not, I'm on the professional standards committee. Do not negotiate contracts in this addition. Do not negotiate commissions in this additional clause section right here, because if you write in something that's different in the MLS, you are in violation and you will lose, and your broker is going to be responsible for paying the difference or paying the fine. Now, if the MLS says 2 coconuts, okay, and you write 3 coconuts in there, immediately, whether the offer is accepted or not, you are in violation and you will lose and you will get marks on your license, okay? And the reason being is because the standard of practice in the code of ethics says that they're trying to keep you from using the commission as a reason to accept the sales price. If you're working with investors,
right? A lot of us will see they'll try to get you to, if they put that in here, so-and-so waives commission, trying to entice you to take the offer. Do not sign a contract where in here where they're asking you, where they're saying they're willing to waive the commission. Okay?
I'll put it to all these wholesalers.
Do not do that. Okay?
So what do you do? Say something.
So all of that.
Is it the modification to listing agreement?
I believe no, not the listing agreement. I'll find it and I'll send it to you because yes. So it is a commendum, but now understand.
Sometimes they just use you as their broker.
Understand. Now this is on the commission addendum. On the commission addendum on here, it says that there's one signature for only one broker. Both brokers have to agree, especially if it's going to be affecting both. Correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, but if the investor doesn't have a broker,
Mhm.
and he's ready
If he
to
puts
wait for me, what?
if he puts it in here, have them sign a new offer. Have them sign a new offer. Have them send a new one without that in there. Because then if you're the listing agent, hopefully your listing agreement, because that's where commissions are dictated in the listing agreement and what's on the MLS, not in contracts. Contracts, there should be no mention of any commission on a contract. None, because that is not information that's privy to the buyer or seller. Now you guys are going to say on the CRSP contract or that broker. That is, you only fill that out for one side, whatever side you're representing, because you don't know, and that's just based on the MLS. So I have one question right here. Yes, sir.
Yes, can somebody have a listing agreement with their seller saying, if I'm co-creating with another agent, I'm splitting 3%, and on the MLS they put 2%, or vice versa, they want to give a bonus and then they split.
Whatever the listing agreement says goes. The issue is that a lot of times you won't know as the buyer or as a co-op agent what the listing agreement says. Now, what agents have done on listing agreements, they can have the max or what they're going to be paid, how many coconuts they're going to be paid as the listing brokerage. And then in the co-op section, it says to be split at broker's discretion as they see fit. So that's how it can be different.
Different question. He's asking if somebody.
No, I got it.
I only say I'm getting 4. What he's saying is that can somebody lie and say let's say I got a 6% for my seller, but on MLS I only say that I'm getting 4.
It's 6%, and on the same agreement it says I will split. If I sell this with another broker, I'll split it.
Give them 3.
50, and then what I put on the MLS, which they might not know, that I'm offering 2%.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, but that's
illegal.
It is illegal, but like I said, we as co-op agents never know unless the seller looks at it. Now, what you guys have to understand is that what's in the MLS is what you guys know. Now, but once again, on the CRSP contract, on the as-is, you look right here. It has no mention of commission amounts. Okay, has no mention. On the CRSP, it says percentage, right? On this form right here, on this checklist, it has a section for the commissions. Okay, now I know that a lot of you think that whatever you're getting on one side of the transaction, then it's the exact same on the other side. That is not the case. Only put information that you know. For instance, on this contract, if you put 3% for this section right here next to your name, if you're the buyer specialist, if you put 3 coconuts right there, and then on my side, if you put 3 coconuts, I can take you in front of the professional standards. I can file an issue with the grievance committee and you will lose. Because you're telling me, or you're using this section to almost negotiate, even if your side is right. The fact that you don't know what the other side is getting, you are in trouble. Because the MLS, you guys understand that whether it is the co-op or single agent transaction or no broker relationship, all of that is only commissions for you as a co-op broker, co-op agent. You guys understand that? That is not for one side or the other side. And people say, well, why are there 3 when there's only 2 agents in the transaction? That only talks about the relationship that you have with your client. What I have seen, and I'm going to come to you right next. What I have seen, take a very close look in the MLS, because it affects our money and we care about that, right? If you don't care about money, then come work for me. All right. So the reason why we care about that is there are 3 sections. Agent. It will, for a transaction agent, it may say 2.5 coconuts. For no broker relationship, it may say 2 coconuts. Okay. If I, as a listing agent, ask you for the brokerage relationship agreement with you and your client, you have to send it to me, right, to verify the amount of commission that you're going to get. So right here. So can we make that bigger or not? No worries. So right here, you'll see buyer agent right here, 3%, transaction broker. Whoa, you jumped on me. There we go. 3%. It's not just me, right? It's not me? Okay. And then non-rep or non-brokerage, 3%. Don't be afraid if you see 3, 2.5, 2. What you're dealing with is a listing agent who knows what they're doing. How many of you sign EBBA, exclusive buyer broker agreements with your buyers? The majority of you do not sign exclusive buyer broker agreements. So if you do not sign an exclusive buyer broker agreement, I, as an agent, could put 4% right there. I could put 4%. I could put 2 right here and 2 right there. What are you going to think that you're getting? You're going to think you're getting 4%. If you cannot provide me an exclusive buyer broker agreement saying that you are a single agent, you're going to get 2%. You guys understand?
I'm not showing that.
Hold on. Here we go. Listen up. Okay, I need everyone's attention right here because this is going to affect what you make, but it cannot affect what you show your clients. Okay? Make sure it affects what you make, but it cannot affect what you show your clients. Me as a listing agent, I am a listing agent. This is my listing. I'm going to put in the buyer agent compensation right here. I might put 4% right there. You're going to say, this is going to be the one that I sell to my buyers. I'm going to push it on them because the reality is it happens. If transaction broker in Florida, if you don't have them sign anything, what are we? Transaction brokers. So if the first one says 4 coconuts, you guys with me? The second one says 2 coconuts. The last one says 2 coconuts. If you do not have an EBBA 5 exclusive buyer broker agreement signed and send that at the time of the offer, if you don't communicate at the time of the offer, your EBBA, guess what you've just done? You're just telling me that you're getting this. And I don't have to say a word to you. All I have to do is disclose the contract, the entire contract package, and my listing agreement or the MLS to the title company. And then you're going to be getting 2%. 2 coconuts. Yes, sir.
What is the non-rep?
Non-rep. Okay, so does any, no. So right here, the buyer's agent compensation, that's if you're a single agent. Right. Does anyone here act as a single agent? So I'm going to tell you, I act as a single agent every time for the simple reason is that when we talk about the fiduciary duties, that in a single agent, there is obedience, right? And full disclosure. None of these others have obedience or full disclosure. So if you're a transaction broker, I say broker, you guys will be, okay. So if you're a transaction broker, if you find out that the other party will take $50,000 less, you cannot disclose that information to the person to your buyer. If you find out that the seller will take 50 grand less as a transaction broker, you have to do what's in the best action of the transaction, not what's in the best interest of your buyer that they think works for us exclusively. You guys understand that part? As a single agent, if I find out from Joe that he'll tell my buyer 50 grand, boom. You guys with me there? If I find out some information, if the buyer, if my client, and if I am a single agent, if my buyer asks me to do something, as long as it's legal, I have the responsibility to do it. Okay? Full obedience is not one of the fiduciary duties in these other 2. All right, so what happens is if you are a transaction broker, because you haven't had anything signed, First of all, I hurt your feelings and tell you you're not getting 4 coconuts, you're getting 2. And then if I find out that you did something in obedience to someone where there's limited obedience, then you're going right back before me in front of professional standards. If I am a single agent and my client tells me to do A, B, C, and it's legal, I am acting underneath the fiduciary duties in the Code of Ethics. You guys understand that? Now, what the non-relationship is, no brokerage relationship. Some buyers will say, I don't want you representing me. All I want you to do is present the offer. Okay? That's what this is right here. Now, if you're going to do this, there has to be a no brokerage relationship agreement signed at the time of your initial consultation. Okay? So those are usually going to be our investors. A lot of our investors will sign a no brokerage relationship agreement, or the agent is going to ask the investor to sign a no brokerage relationship, and that just absolves them of all responsibilities except for accounting for all funds, being honest in the transaction, and then delivering escrow monies. So this has the least liability for you dealing with the buyer. Right? Because other than presenting the offer, accounting for all funds, dealing fairly and honestly, and then making sure escrow is delivered, you don't have anything else here. In this section, there are 7 responsibilities that you have, and I believe that as a single agent, there are 9 fiduciary duties, if I'm not mistaken. Right. I had a question right here. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you say when you are a buyer agent, you have to present that with the offer.
Yes.
Okay. To get the commission. If the commission here is 2% and the other 2 are 3%, if you don't present that, then you can claim the 3%. Okay, so no agent in my 13 years, I've never seen a lower single agent commission than here. What we see a lot is the same across, unless you look at one of my listings, that's going to be really high, and this is going to be about market or what we're seeing. Because there are no normal market. So that'd be really high to get you there. But then I know, for instance, look in this room, how many of you use an exclusive buyer broker agreement, get it signed? You guys are not doing it. So I can put 4% right there. Now, if you bring an exclusive buyer broker agreement at the time of your offer, I'm contractually required to pay that. But I know that right here, that's what we look at first.
If the buyer's agent brings it on.
If the buyer's agent, yes, sir.
Okay, we were just reviewing those from class. Let me ask you a question. But wasn't there a shortfall to doing a buyer's agent, like that you couldn't? There was an obstacle to
Well,
it.
you couldn't get both sides of the deal.
Right.
Consent to be a transaction. You couldn't top that.
Yes.
Take yourself out of it.
Yes. Now understand that the EBBA and the single agent and everything is only if the transaction is within the same brokerage. Not you as an agent, it's the same brokerage. So Nanette doesn't have to have both sides. If she has one side and the gentleman here has the seller, then there has to be, someone has to have a conversation, right? Because it might be, okay, she has to give it up. Now, we aren't even aware. We're not even paying attention. All right. And I know a lot of the big franchises have that issue a lot. And then I know that Jenny and her team are sitting here asking, okay, where is the transaction authorization to transition to a transaction broker? And if you don't have it, there's an issue. Okay, so that is one of the ways. Now, what I do is, do you guys know how many the percentage of inter-office transactions that are happening in our MLS right now? Does anyone have any idea?
25%.
Less than that. Okay, so we're right at about 21% of inter-office, but everyone thinks that's the way, and it's just easy, right? But see, the brokers, they push and they want it, but the reality is it's not happening as much as we want it to. Now, on here, variable dual rate commission, and I hate to just talk to get here, but it's so important for our offers. Variable dual rate commission, the VAR dual RT. The reason, we lost the cast. So the reason, who here knows what variable dual rate commission is? Besides you, you're on mute, Nanette. Now, I do have, Nanette, make sure I unmute you because I muted my wife about 2 weeks ago and she hasn't spoken yet. Okay, so does anyone know what the variable dual rate commission is and why it's so important? Nanette.
The purchase price. It adjusts the percentage for them.
Yes. Nope.
There's a difference between the compensation to the buyer, that the seller is offering the seller agent and the buyer's agent. If there's a difference.
I think it's if you are getting different compensation, if you bring the buyer or you don't.
Absolutely correct. So if you're, okay, Nanette, you're unmuted. Okay, that's what I was gonna say. You see, that's exactly right. So if you two-side the transaction, and if your commission split, the number of coconuts changes, then variable dual rate should say yes. Now, if you are a buyer specialist, if you're working with the buyer and you see variable dual rate yes, you have permission to call the listing agent and say, what is the difference? What is the difference? Why does that matter? Because that will affect the net that the seller is going to get. Okay, so for instance, if I have the seller and variable dual rate is in effect, if I say if it's a co-op involved, it'll be 6 coconuts. Two-side the transaction, it's going to be 5 coconuts. Does that matter to you as a buyer's agent? Heck yes, because now if my seller accepts your offer, that means they're paying 6 coconuts. If I bring a buyer, they're paying 5 coconuts. 1 coconut is a big deal to the seller. Now you can also use that to get listings where you can say, hey, if we bring 2, this, but then you'll get a discount if I bring the buyer. 96% of all transactions involve 2 agents, but in the seller's mind, they're thinking that they're going to save 1% or 1 coconut. Fair? So make sure if you see yes for variable dual rate, you cannot ask how much are you getting paid. What you can ask is how many points or coconuts difference it would be as opposed to 1 agent two-siding a transaction, or if the buyer is represented by another broker. You guys understand that? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I know you went to the commission part because of a question, but we were talking about the additional terms, and I want to say something, that anything that is right in the additional terms can affect the loan process. So do not use the additional term part to put anything there. Anything you want to put in an additional addendum. For example, seller contribution can affect the appraisal. So when we are processing a loan and we have a seller contribution, we do only the contract because that affects the appraisal value.
Okay, I am going to wait.
Like
Hold on, wait. That's coming from the lender. Yeah. I'm going to tell you guys from an agent who's doing deals in the field. I want to see that in the addition. I want to see it in the additional terms. Okay, if the lender has an issue with it, we'll do an addendum or we'll do something different later on. I want everything disclosed up front. Okay, I want that in there. I want to put seller contributions in there. I want to ask for everything up front, because if we try to hide something and if we come back later on an addendum, right, and if one person signs it and the other didn't know about it, then they sign it later, then it looks bad on us. So she's right that the lenders don't want to see it. I'm telling you, as a broker, as an agent, as someone on professional standards, disclose. Let them see it. If they don't like it, this lender might not like it. Other lenders, they understand title. They understand if they want something, if they want a change done, let them do it. Now, because think about it, if I am representing the buyer, do you think I want the buyers to sign 12 pages or 13 pages? 12. Because they're going to say, and I understand where you're coming from, but then your job is to do what's in the best interest of the transaction. My job is to do what's in the best interest of the transaction for my part or for my client. So totally different. If you are a seller, you might want it to look one way. Title's going to want it to look one way. You guys.
We want to close. We want the seller to sell. We want the buyer to.
I understand that, but it's hard enough to get sellers to sign and buyers to sign 12 pages. This is coming from 13 years in, looking at tens of thousands of contracts. My coaches and their coaches, we're telling you that you can sign and execute initially. And then if something needs to come back on that 1-page contract addendum, that's the way to do it. I am not going, because while she has a point from the lender side, I'm not a lender. I don't care what the lender does on their side of the business. Close the deal. Do you guys agree? I don't care what an appraiser does. Close the deal. I don't care what title does. Close the deal. I just know that I need to do what's in the best interest of my client, get them to get the transaction going, because if it's going to cost me a day to explain why we have an additional addendum versus 12 pages, and someone else gets the property, guess who screwed up? Me. Okay, now if you want to have that conversation up front when you're doing your initial buyer consultation, by all means go ahead. I just know that what's in the best interest of, or what the law says can be done, and then specific lenders, if they want to do something different, or title companies want to do something different, because if we try to do something for every lender and every title company, we're gonna have a 40-page document that's never executed. Yes, sir.
Just a comment and a question. I think what she meant is later on.
No, she's talking about initially.
Later on.
Together.
Yes.
Together with the contract. No later.
Me
No later because an addendum later, it takes time.
After?
And then in the
But she's
meantime,
saying-
they
she's
can
saying
delay the
time?
process.
Oh,
Together.
because sometimes later on, you know that there's an issue with the appraisal or whatever, and then you have to have an addendum because you're not going to go back to the contract and change it itself, and then you just keep it aside. You have the addendum signed by both parties. Everybody's good. You have the contract, and you know the buyer is getting that money like later on in the contract, so that you don't have to present it to the mortgager and say, okay, well, the seller agreed to get that credit.
Okay, now from what I want you guys to understand is that I don't care what's understood outside of a contract, what's enforceable, and this, my job is for you guys not to get sued. Okay, and for you to have as little liability as possible as agents, not as lenders, not as title, not as attorneys. If it's not on paper written somewhere within the time frames or the deadlines, then we write judgments from professional standards all the time where
if it's signed on paper, legal, both parties, but it's not presented to the bank, to the lender.
We're supposed to disclose everything.
no, so not always to the lender. So everything doesn't have to be to the lender. What I'm saying is just make sure. You guys know that attorney. You guys know that attorney addendum I said in here? Get that over to them. Let them advise. Because what we start doing then is we start having either being lenders, or we start being attorneys or title companies, and that's not our job.
Let me ask you the opposite situation, because we were discussing this the other day. Let's say you have a contract, it's executed, everything's done, everybody's closing, everybody's happy. A week before the closing, the seller says, you know what? I figured out that I really don't want to move out all my crap. $10,000 to the buyer.
Right?
How would you present that? Because I get
You get what?
nervous about that.
Okay, so first,
because if you're saying, if the buyer is telling me, yeah, I'm going to give you $20,000 before the closing, it's not going to be in the contract. It's not part of the terms.
right?
He's going to write a check at the
Right.
closing maybe, or he's going to give him a check and that check doesn't clear. Try getting your stuff back.
It can, so that cannot, so we never want to, so any, and now the lenders and the title, they do not want to see the sale of personal property inside of inside the contract, okay? So that would be a totally separate addendum. That would be a different addendum.
Write an addendum?
That's what I told you.
So,
They have to pay taxes on it, you have
Yeah,
to list it individually.
So-
It's either sold furnished or it's not sold furnished. Furnishing is separate.
so, yes.
You're gonna put, like, when you put washer dryer, I don't know the line on the contract, but on the first
Yeah, but
page,
that's not-
you would put, C
No,
attached and
no.
listed as
So
furnished.
if it's going to be furnished, there is
That's the appliance.
At the very beginning, it says.
So that is in but he's asking if they came up later and asked. So if they came later and asked for furnishing, that is a separate transaction. That's a transaction of personal property. That is not a real.
The taxes, and I understand that worries you. I could care less, because the only thing that I'm worried about, and this is what I'm thinking, is that I could imagine the day of the closing, the person writes a check, the property's now yours, everything that's inside of it now belongs to the buyer, and guess what? That check doesn't clear. Because that happens.
Yeah, that
happens. And then now the seller moved to Utah and he's going, hey Memo, where's my $20,000 check? That check bounced.
Cashier.
I need you to go. Yeah.
But that's separate between them, because that happened also.
It is separate between
in
them.
short sales.
But it is separate between them, but since you're involved in the transaction, it's your name. So that's why I tell you that I get nervous, because Louis has me on a much smaller scale, but it did happen to me once, that somebody that sold something. Give me a second, I'm not gonna.
Hold on, wait, guys.
It happened to me with something that they had already sold, and the guy said, listen, I want this. Oh, okay, fine, we'll understand each other. And then afterwards, the person that they were coming to was me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I asked you, I think that the safest way for something legal is to do it in an addendum.
The safest way to do it legally is to have them speak to attorneys and let them deal with it.
That's not really part of the real estate transaction, so we don't, at the closing table, we don't like.
Let me come here.
We can't see checks going back and forth and things like that, because it has nothing to do with the actual real estate transaction. It's outside of it, unless
Agreed,
you draw up the addendum. I think that's between those two parties.
Agreed, but if those two parties get pissed off at each other, they're not coming to you. They're not coming to
the agent.
They're coming to me.
Okay.
I would say they either need to talk to a lawyer to do it properly, or an addendum has to be drawn.
All right.
So do it like a separate contract with two attorneys. Got it.
Yes. Hold on. We're going right here. We have about 3 more minutes, guys. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. You had a question.
I know we're going here then here.
The day of the closing, that money is disbursed to the seller.
Wait, I'm sorry?
The title company, if what he's asking is on an addendum, and we disclose it to all parties. Title company, everybody, the day of the closing, will the title company disperse that money to the seller?
Okay, 2 things. Is it a finance deal? If it's a finance deal, a lender is not going to want that on the contract. That's one of those things where lenders. Okay, no. But even if it's an addendum, because that is, we want to send the entire contract over to the lender. If they see that the furniture is in there, they're going to ask every time. The lender's going to ask for that to be removed and changed, right? And to draw up something outside of the contract. If it's a cash transaction, it's usually just going to be a cash deal furnished. You know, if it happens after the contract is executed, then I'm going to advise you guys to have an attorney draft up something between them. Now,
a separate contract just for
hold on, guys. Hold on.
For $220, and he wants $20,000. We can put the offer for $240, but we put on the additional $20,000.
No, so.
That's already gone under contract. They come up, maybe a week before closing and say that they want to add this into the terms. So that's not really something that you're.
So if you want to put 240 in there, just make sure that it's furnished and don't put in the addendum that 20,000 is for the purchase. Okay, we're going right here. Yes, sir.
Just to rehash, I just want to make so we're all clear on it. Forget about all those scenarios. The scenario is they come and see the house, they fall in love with the house and the furniture in the house. The house is for, $500,000, and they say, hey, I'm gonna give you $530 for the house with all the furniture. No problem. They send you the contract for $530. All you would have to do is online, in 2021, put furnished.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're good?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. No one, that's it.
And
that wasn't the scenario.
No, he changed.
Free scenario.
Okay, one more minute.
I was just gonna say that where you said the compensation up to the broker's discretion, that's not an option on the listing agreement.
Not on the state listing agreement. Understand that a listing agreement does not have to be a FAR contract. The listing agreements that I use, okay, in the compensation part, it says that the commission, the total coconuts will be X% to be split at the discretion of the listing broker. So if it's drawn up by an attorney, we get used to seeing what's in the MLS. I'm sorry, to what's in Form Simplicity and what we see. All listing agreements are not what we have there. Some brokerages have their own listing agreements, and
if I put it here,
as long as the seller, if you put it there and if you put something different here, you're wrong. Now the issue is someone finding out that you're wrong. If you want to make a difference, don't forget the listing agreement is between you and the seller. If you want to write in the additional terms in the listing agreement and the seller initial or seller change and sign off on it, that's totally different.
No, we have to use the listing agreement that's in That's informed simplicity. I can just imagine everybody coming up with their own
maybe an
formula.
additional that broker is able to.
You got to do whatever he says.
That's Bobby's choice.
But because don't forget that money is the broker's decision, and from there, you guys have to operate within their law, whatever they say.
Then you might, you might have a listing and you're presented one of these contracts. So that's a whole different thing now. You're not, we have to use the FAR bar here, but I'm saying you might get something like.
But that won't affect the commission that you're being paid on the listing side. Yeah, he's thinking listing agreement.
So can you send us your listing agreement?
No, I can't.
No. We have 355 agents. We're not going to have 355 different listing agreements.
Right. And
I'm sure Bobby.
No, because that and what he's saying is, what you guys have to understand is that the liability of everything you guys do, while you might get a slap on the wrist, the broker, they get locked in stocks when one of their agents screws up.
Move on.
Okay. All right. Okay. So now what I am going to challenge you all to do is this. Look at the contracts. If you are not studying your contracts on a weekly basis, that's the as-is and the CRSP and the addenda that you use, whether it is the lead-based paint. If it's built prior to what, you need lead-based paint? 1978, lead-based paint. Understand the condo disclosure versus homeowners disclosure. Understand what's needed for a single family versus the condos if we're talking about seller disclosures. Right? While seller disclosure is not required by law, it is strongly encouraged just so that for disclosure. Okay. Also, speak to your title companies. Ask them questions. Use them. Ask questions. If you don't know what's happening in the contract, ask them. If you have a lender that you work with, if they have best practices and if they are the ones that's funneling you business, find out how they want contracts written up. I'm not telling you to do it their way, but you can get their input, right? These are people who specialize in handling the money for our buyers. These are the people who specialize in closing our transactions. If everyone knows the way that we do business, then do it that way for specific clients, specific transactions, based on your brokerage relationship, whatever you want that way. Nanette, you had a question?
I was just going to add that, especially if it's FHA or VA, they have really specific terms and stuff on their financing.
And that's when. Now, if you do not put certain things on the contract or on the contract and then do addendum, if it's that case, and there's a special addendum for that. So I'm going to ask you guys to use as few addenda as possible to get the job done. Simply because if we have to sign 13, 15, 17 pages as opposed to 12 pages, it gets kind of fishy. Not fishy, it's just harder because we want to make it as easy for our clients as possible or our customers as possible. And make sure you're utilizing the cover page, the checklist here.
And you just missed one thing, the offer.
The term sheet. Do you have that one? Can you get that one up? So the term sheet is, it's the equivalent of the contract to lease. This really became prevalent during when the REOs came up, because instead of receiving, if we had these terms, would it be would it be accepted, or because we want to have a term sheet so we don't have to go through and do a full 12 pages. Now, this is not for the co-op agent as much as it is for your buyer. This is for your buyer. If you're working with a buyer who's kind of iffy and who's on the fence, you want to put the seller name, buyer name. Now, this is not an offer or a contract. It's intended to set forth possible terms. Okay, so now, would this work with a hot property that is probably going to go under contract in 11 days? I would not use it then. I would not use it. I would say get a full offer over on that. The MLS for more days than the median days on market. And if your buyer wants to submit 5 offers on properties, if you guys are working with those investor buyers, instead of sending all offers over, send a proposed term sheet. We see this a lot in the commercial for the letter of intent. So this is where you're going to have one page. Remember how I said we want to have as few pages as possible. This right here will allow us to get all of the pertinent information on this page. And scroll down for me just a bit, sir.
Yeah.
And instead of sending the 12 pages, we're sending this page right here over to the listing agent, and then they're going to say, okay, yes, send the offer, or more times than not, they may say, well, let me have a conversation with my seller, and then we'll get back to you. So this is something that will help you with the bid. You can put that in. Is anyone currently using this? Is anyone currently using this?
What's the name again?
So this is the proposed terms.
Good question. I just had it. Proposed term sheet. The reason why I brought this up was because this came up in the class, and I thought it was a really good tool. Even if you don't, is it cast?
Yes.
Okay. What I was thinking was, sometimes when you sit with a client and you send them over a 12-page contract, an e-sign, they get nervous. It's really extensive. And if you really look at the contract, there are very few things that we're actually filling out. All the rest is BS and it's standard, correct? And the things that we fill out are usually the stuff that's on the IMAP and on the MLS and on the sheet, which is basically these things down here. So what I was thinking that it was a really good tool was when you have a client, when you have a client that it's delicate, or that maybe you need to sit them down and explain to them, listen, these are the things that I need to set forth and whatever, that maybe this could be like the intro to the contract. Kind of telling what you're going to tell them. So you fill this out with them together. Okay, we agree to this, we agree to this, we agree to this, and then you fill out the contract. So that when they get the contract, it reflects this. So I thought it would be like a really good cover sheet, if you want to call it.
It's basically an LOI.
Yes.
Exactly.
So in commercial, we see the LOI all the time. So this is just setting forth those terms. Now, like I said, it's not binding. Yeah. So it can be used for two people depending on how you use it. The first one could be for your buyer, as Memo was saying, to make them feel, okay, I'll look at this, have a conversation. You know, that's one thing to ease them into it. Or it could be for the listing agent if you're working with the buyer who's submitting 10 offers. You know, instead of submitting 10 offers, 120 pages, you know, to various agents, you can say, okay, we want to do this, if you have that investor, or if your buyer is just tired of submitting offers because they've lost so many deals, this would be a great way. You say, hey, Joe, check this out. Instead of doing the full thing, let's just send over a term sheet, see what they come back at, and we can negotiate that. I would not send this over on hot properties that you're expecting to go under contract quickly, because a lot of times the listing agent, we in this room, will say they're not serious, right? Because this is, so it's a fine line. So understand, if it's something that you think is going, if your buyer loves it, I would say submit the full offer signed by the buyer so we can try to get something executed. If you're in a filling out process, or you just want to see maybe your buyer's just jet lagged from the number of offers they've submitted, this is a great tool. Now, before all offers, an easy thing, and just with the contract, pick up the phone, call the listing agent, ask them, do they have offers on the property? Legally, they have to tell you if they have offers, not how much it is. You can try that. Maybe you get a dummy on the other end that'll tell you. So they have to tell you if they have offers, and then you can discuss the terms on the phone if you want to. That personal conversation on the phone is causing us to lose a lot of transactions because people just aren't picking up the phone and calling. It's not on the listing agent to answer the phone. That's a different class, different subject. But if you want, call. Ask them about, you know, if they have offers, or let them know you're going to be anticipating an offer. Once you send it, pick up the phone and let them know that you sent it and that they need to check their inbox as well. Because a lot of things, especially with form simplicity or just other forms in general, it might be form simplicity. So form simplicity is not as bad. Some contracts, once you go back and forth, it might be 4 megabytes, 6 megabytes. It might just get filtered out into their spam or junk. Yes, sir.
If you send multiple offers and let's say both two get accepted at the same time, and the buyer chooses one, do you have to send in cancellation to the other one?
Okay. That's all I have for you guys. You've been fantastic.
Thank you very much. You want to get up and say something real quick?
Yes.
I'm Jenny with Title Now. You guys usually see Wendy here. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing. We appreciate you guys.
She's basically the one that
having us
organizes every time that Wendy says yes, she does all the work.
of us really are. We are attorney owned and operated, and we're hopeful to continue doing business with you guys.
Thank
very
you.
much.
And thank you much for your.
May I say one more thing?
Sure, you can say anything.
The training that you guys are getting for RPR, if you guys are not using RPR, you're leaving money on the table and you're not looking as professional as the competition. So when Connie, she is one of my best real estate friends, when she's here, make sure you're in this room, RPR mobile, on the phone. Whether you're doing an open house, you can walk right in, pull up all the information, make sure you guys are here for that, as well as IMAP. You guys have so many tools available to you. If you're not utilizing these tools, you're losing to other agents who might not be as skilled as you. They might just be more skillful at pulling tools that you guys are already paying for in your membership. So make sure that you guys come to the trainings, utilize those. Second to none, and you guys want to take advantage of those opportunities. Because if you're not, there's someone else that's using it, and even though they may be less skilled than you, they look more professional because the RPR reports that come out make you look like a rock star. And I'm talking about a couple of clicks of a button from your phone while you're binge watching your Netflix. You can get those CMAs out with, I think, about 7 or 8 clicks. So make sure that you're using that and the IMAP. So don't just think, oh my gosh, I have to go to the training. Less than 2% of adults ever take, once they finish their formal schooling, less than 2% of adults ever go to some type of training class. So that means that you guys are instant 2%ers, right? And that, not in income wise, but in education wise, that's good, and then we'll get you up there with the income.
Thank you for the infomercial, but yeah, that's the 10th. So you guys should all be coming to that, even if you know how to use RPR. I guarantee you're gonna learn a lot because Connie's excellent. And again, on the 24th, she's doing IMAP. More than likely, both of the trainings are gonna be here in Miami Beach, unless we fix the problem in Kendall. But more than likely, they're gonna be here in Miami Beach. So just so you guys know, the 10th and the 24th. And then on the 17th, Vasil's doing the photography, and business cards, and profile. And then on the 31st, he's doing the IDX website, the London Foster URL, email, signature, and training. Okay? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And please take donuts. I have 2 dozen donuts and nobody ate that one.